They say the truth finds you when you least expect it. But nothing could have prepared this old woman for what she saw around that young waitress's neck. Highway 84 stretched for miles through southern Mississippi. Nothing but pine trees, rusted mailboxes, and the occasional billboard advertising catfish or gospel radio. The afternoon sun beat down on the windshield of a pearl-white Bentley that looked out of place on that old two-lane road. Inside sat Eleanor Whitford, 82 years old, sharp as a blade, wearing her trademark pearl earrings and silk scarf. She wasn't used to driving herself anymore, not since her arthritis worsened, but today was different. Her driver had fallen ill that morning, and Eleanor had insisted she could manage just fine. She wasn't one to rely on people. She never had been, not even after losing her only son. By the time she reached Magnolia Diner, a small, weathered place just outside of Hattiesburg, her back ached and her throat felt dry. The diner looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. Neon coffee sign flickering, hand-painted menu board by the door, and a screen door that squeaked like it had a story of its own. Eleanor parked the Bentley out front, ignoring the stares from two men sipping sweet tea at the curb. She knew what they were thinking. What's a woman like her doing in a place like this? She didn't care. Inside, the air smelled of bacon grease, old wood, and coffee that had been on the burner too long. It reminded her of simpler days, of mornings in her old family kitchen before everything went wrong. She made her way to a corner booth, her steps slow but steady, her posture still perfect. A young waitress appeared almost immediately, holding a notepad and flashing a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name tag read, Tasha. "Afternoon, ma'am. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "Just coffee, dear." "Black, if you have it coming right up," Tasha said, and turned to leave. That's when Eleanor noticed it. A small, silver locket resting just below Tasha's collarbone. The chain glimmered softly under the light, but it wasn't the shine that caught her attention. It was the engraving. Two small letters etched into the surface. M.W. Eleanor blinked. Her breath hitched, just for a second. It couldn't be. No, she told herself. That locket was lost decades ago, buried with her son's memory. Tasha disappeared into the kitchen, unaware of the storm she had just stirred. Eleanor sat there, hands trembling slightly, staring at the door where the waitress had gone. She tried to calm herself, pressing a napkin against her lips, but her thoughts spun like an old record she couldn't stop. How could that necklace be here, in the middle of nowhere? She'd given it to her son Michael on his 18th birthday. He wore it every day until the night he walked out. The night they argued, the night he said words no mother should ever have to hear. After that, she never saw him again. Years later, the police found his car near the Gulf Coast, but not him, just nothing. And yet, here she was, staring at a piece of him around a stranger's neck. Tasha returned with the coffee and set it gently on the table. "Here you go, ma'am." "You want me to leave the pot?" Eleanor's eyes didn't leave the locket. "That necklace, where did you get it?" Tasha hesitated, one hand still on the coffee pot. "This?" she asked, fingers brushing the locket. "It was my mama's." "Why?" Eleanor forced a polite smile, though her throat tightened. "It just looks familiar, that's all." Tasha nodded slowly, sensing something in the woman's tone. "She gave it to me before she passed. I don't take it off much." Eleanor stared at the steaming coffee but didn't lift it to her lips. Her mind was miles away now. Back to that last night with Michael, the shouting, the slammed door, the silence that followed. She whispered under her breath, "M.W. Michael Whitford." Tasha didn't hear her. She was already tending to another table, laughing softly with a group of truckers who called her Sunshine. But the older woman's eyes followed her every move. Something deep in Eleanor's chest told her that today, this ordinary stop, this small-town diner, wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something she'd buried long ago, trying to rise again. But how could a stranger in Mississippi be connected to the son she lost decades ago? The diner had picked up since Eleanor first walked in. A couple of men in work boots filled the air with laughter from the far booth, and a family with two toddlers sat near the window, tearing at biscuits and spilling orange juice. The kind of noise that made a place feel alive. But Eleanor barely noticed any of it. Her eyes stayed locked on Tasha. There was something about that girl. Her steady rhythm, the way she balanced plates up her arm, the tiredness behind her smile. She moved like someone who'd learned to hold everything together, even when life kept trying to pull her apart. When Tasha came back with the check, Eleanor decided to speak again. "You said that necklace was your mother's, right?" Tasha looked at her, polite but guarded. "Yes, ma'am. It was one of the only things she left me when she passed." "I see." Eleanor's voice softened. "Do you happen to know where she got it?" The young woman thought for a second. "Not really. I think she said a man gave it to her a long time ago, before I was born. She never talked about him much, just that he left." Those words hit Eleanor harder than she expected. He left. It sounded too familiar, too close to the story she'd lived. "Your mother?" Eleanor asked quietly. "What was her name?" Tasha blinked. "Denise. Denise Green." Eleanor repeated it under her breath. "Denise Green." She searched her memory, her mind flipping through faces, moments, places. No match, no connection. But something inside her still wouldn't let go of that locket. "You sure you're all right, ma'am?" Tasha asked, concern slipping into her voice. Eleanor smiled faintly. "I'm fine, dear. Just an old woman remembering things she probably shouldn't." Tasha chuckled softly. "Well, I do that too sometimes. Guess that makes me old at heart." Eleanor laughed, genuinely this time. It felt strange but nice. "You can't be more than what, 25? 31, Tasha said proudly. "Got a 7-year-old at home who keeps me on my toes." "Ah," Eleanor replied. "A mother." "Yeah," Tasha said, glancing at the kitchen clock. "Single one. Been that way since he was born." Eleanor took another sip of her coffee, the bitterness cutting through her chest. She watched Tasha clear the table next to hers, humming faintly as she worked. A tune Eleanor didn't recognize, yet somehow it felt familiar. Not the melody, but the tone, something gentle and sad. A few minutes later, Tasha brought her a small refill without being asked. "Here you go, ma'am." On the house. "That's kind of you," Eleanor said softly. Tasha shrugged. "You remind me of my grandma. She used to come sit at the kitchen table and talk about everything under the sun. Didn't matter if we were listening or not." Eleanor smiled. "Sounds like a wise woman." She was. Hard, but wise. For a moment, silence hung between them. Comfortable, almost familiar. Two women from different worlds, sitting in a small-town diner, connected by something neither could explain. But the weight of that necklace wouldn't leave Eleanor alone. The initials gleamed again when the sun hit it through the window. M.W., her son's initials. Her boy who never came home. The boy who walked out saying he didn't want her money, her control, or her expectations. And now, decades later, that same necklace sat around the neck of a waitress who looked at her with the kind of gentle respect she hadn't felt from anyone in years. Eleanor sat back in her booth, her hands folded neatly in her lap, but her thoughts ran wild. Could it be a coincidence? Surely there were other MWS in the world. Or maybe, just maybe, this young woman was part of the story she thought ended long ago. She had to know. But how do you ask someone if they might be carrying a piece of your dead son's past, without sounding insane? Eleanor stayed seated long after her plate had been cleared. The other customers came and went, but she remained, quiet, watchful. Her mind caught somewhere between disbelief and curiosity. Every so often, her gaze drifted to Tasha as she worked behind the counter, wiping it down with quick, efficient movements. The locket glinted again beneath the warm fluorescent light, almost mocking Eleanor with its silent familiarity. Finally, Tasha caught her staring. "Ma'am," she said with a light laugh, "you keep looking at me like I've got spinach in my teeth." Eleanor blinked, embarrassed. "Oh, I didn't mean to stare, dear. I just—" She trailed off, unsure of what to say. Tasha leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "It's all right. You look like you've seen that necklace before or something." Eleanor hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, something like that." "Well, it's not anything fancy," Tasha replied. "Probably not worth much, but it's special to me." "I can tell," Eleanor said, her voice tight. "You wear it like it means more than gold." Tasha smiled at that. "It does." Eleanor's eyes softened. "Your mother must have meant the world to you." "She did," Tasha said. "Even though we didn't have much, she made things feel steady, you know? She worked nights at the hospital, came home in the morning, and still made breakfast for me before school. I didn't realize how strong she was until I got older. Eleanor's heart squeezed. Denise Green, a woman she'd never met, had been raising a daughter while her own son had vanished into the same stretch of time. Tasha paused, noticing the faraway look on the older woman's face. "You sure you're all right?" Eleanor smiled faintly, brushing her fingers along the rim of her coffee cup. "You remind me of someone I used to know. Someone I wish I could have been kinder to." Tasha tilted her head. "Someone in your family?" Eleanor nodded slowly. "My son." The room seemed too still for a moment. The background chatter faded, the clinking of dishes softened. "What happened to him?" Tasha asked, her tone careful, respectful. "He left," Eleanor said. "We argued. I said things I shouldn't have. Pride is a terrible thing, Tasha. It blinds you to what matters." She took a shaky breath. "He walked out that night and never came back. They said he died years later, but I never found closure." Tasha swallowed, her eyes flicking to the locket again. "That's awful. I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Eleanor whispered. "It's just life catching up with me, I suppose." Tasha tried to lighten the mood. "Well, maybe he's out there somewhere, living a good life." "You never know." Eleanor smiled gently, though her eyes glistened. "Maybe." She wanted to tell her about the locket, about the initials, about the storm of memories clawing at her chest. But she didn't. Not yet. It wasn't the time. Tasha's shift was ending soon. She disappeared into the kitchen again, her laugh echoing faintly as she spoke to a cook. Eleanor's fingers itched to reach out, to grab the necklace and see it up close, but she restrained herself. The thought alone felt invasive, desperate. She'd spent her life learning control, in business, in her family, in her emotions, but right now, sitting in that small-town diner, she felt anything but in control. Her breathing slowed as she watched Tasha return with her check. The young woman's smile was easy again, like she hadn't just been standing in front of a stranger drowning in ghosts. "You heading somewhere special?" Tasha asked, handing her the receipt. "Just passing through," Eleanor replied softly, trying to remember what quiet feels like. Tasha nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "Well, this town's got plenty of that." Eleanor took the check and slipped a 50 into the folder without looking. "Keep the change." Tasha's eyes widened. "Ma'am, this is too much." "Please," Eleanor interrupted. "Consider it a thank you." For the company, Tasha hesitated but eventually smiled. "Thank you, ma'am." "You didn't have to. I know." Eleanor's voice trembled just slightly. "But I wanted to." As Tasha walked away, Eleanor's gaze returned to the necklace. The initials caught the light once more, and her heart sank deeper into the pit of what she'd been trying to ignore. She couldn't leave now, not until she knew the truth behind that necklace. Because if her heart was right, that locket wasn't just a trinket. It was a link to the son she'd never stopped grieving. But what if digging for the truth would break them both? The late afternoon sun slanted through the diner windows, painting the tables in amber light. Most of the lunch crowd had cleared out. The place had quieted down, leaving only the low hum of the ceiling fan and the faint clink of dishes in the back. Tasha was rolling silverware at the counter when Eleanor spoke up again. "Tasha," she said, her tone careful, "would you sit for a minute?" "If you're not too busy." Tasha looked around. The manager was in the kitchen and the floor was empty. She smiled. "Sure, my feet could use a break anyway." Eleanor gestured to the seat across from her. "You've been on your feet all day. Let me buy you a slice of pie." Tasha laughed, slipping into the booth. "Now that's an offer I'll never turn down." She waved to the kitchen. "Hey, Deshawn! 2 pecan pies and some fresh coffee." Eleanor chuckled softly. "You have good taste." "My mama used to make pecan pie every Sunday," Tasha said, folding her napkin. "It's the one thing that feels like home no matter where I eat it." Eleanor nodded, listening closely. "You mentioned your mother worked nights at a hospital. What did she do?" "She was a nurse," Tasha said. "She loved helping people, even when she was sick herself. Never complained once. I was just a teenager when she passed." Eleanor's lips parted slightly. A nurse. That word hit hard. Her son had once dated a nurse, decades ago, before he disappeared. Could it be? Too many coincidences. Still, her pulse began to climb. Tasha went on, unaware of Eleanor's thoughts. "I never met my father. Mama said he wasn't a bad man, just not ready to be one. The older woman's throat tightened. Did she ever tell you his name? Tasha frowned, looking down at her plate. No, I asked her once and she just said he had his reasons. After that, I stopped asking. Eleanor swallowed hard. The same ache she'd carried for years was back. That gnawing guilt, that question of why. I'm sorry, she whispered. You must have felt incomplete, not knowing. Tasha smiled faintly. I used to. But then I figured maybe God knew what he was doing. Maybe I was better off not knowing. Eleanor nodded slowly. Sometimes we think we're protecting people by keeping quiet, but all we really do is build walls between hearts. Tasha looked at her curiously. That sounds like something personal. Eleanor sighed. It is. She hesitated before continuing. My son and we stopped talking over something foolish. Pride got in the way. I told him things no mother should ever say. He left that night and never came home. Tasha's expression softened. You didn't mean it, though. People say things they regret when they're angry. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. Regret doesn't erase words, dear. It only makes them heavier. For a while, they sat quietly, the kind of silence that speaks louder than sound. When Deshawn brought the pie, Tasha thanked him and took a bite, savoring the sweetness. You know, she said, smiling again, you talk about your son like he's still here. Eleanor blinked. Maybe because in my heart he still is. Tasha nodded slowly, chewing in thought. My mama used to say the same thing about her mama. Said people don't really die, they just change rooms. Eleanor smiled faintly, though her chest ached. She was right. For a moment, Eleanor considered telling Tasha everything. About Michael, about the locket, about the night she lost him. But something held her back. Fear, maybe, or the weight of uncertainty. Instead, she asked, Do you mind if I see that necklace up close? It's quite beautiful. Tasha blinked, then unclasped it carefully, handing it across the table. Be gentle with her, she said jokingly. That thing's older than me. Eleanor took it in her shaking hands. The silver was worn, the chain slightly bent, but the engraving was unmistakable. M.W. The same lettering, the same curve of the initials. Her stomach dropped. The room seemed to tilt slightly. She ran her thumb over the tiny groove between the letters. A scratch only she and her son knew about. It had been there since the day he accidentally dropped it on their marble kitchen floor. Her eyes filled. It's beautiful, she whispered, voice barely audible. Yeah, Tasha said, smiling. Mama said it belonged to someone she cared about, a man she never stopped loving. Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. She wanted to ask, but her lips wouldn't move. The truth was right there, just inches away. But saying it out loud would change everything. And once the truth came out, there would be no going back. Tasha noticed the older woman's eyes glisten as she held the locket. You sure you're all right, Ms. Whitford? She asked softly. Eleanor forced a small smile, wiping the corner of her eye. I'm fine, dear. Just that necklace, it carries a lot of history, doesn't it? Tasha nodded. It does. My mama used to say that little locket carried more stories than most folks do in a lifetime. She paused, then leaned back, her eyes distant, like she was seeing something far away. You want to hear something strange? Eleanor looked up. Always. My mama never told me much about where it came from, Tasha began, her voice quiet now. But when I was a kid, she used to sit by the window every night after work, just holding it. Some nights she'd cry, real soft, thinking I didn't hear her. Eleanor's heart clenched. Tasha took another sip of coffee before continuing. When I was about 10, I asked her why she never took it off. She said it was the only piece of him she had left. Him? Eleanor asked carefully. My father. Tasha's gaze dropped to her hands. She told me he wasn't a bad man, just lost. Said he came from a family that didn't approve of her. Said they didn't understand the kind of love they had. Eleanor felt her chest tighten so hard it almost hurt to breathe. She said he left one night after they argued. Promised he'd come back, but he never did, Tasha said. And then one day, she got a call that changed everything. What call? Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tasha hesitated. They told her he was gone, that they found his car by the Gulf, but not him. She never told me his name, but I could tell she never stopped loving him. Eleanor gripped the edge of the table. Every word hit her like a blade, too precise, too personal, too close to her truth to be coincidence. I remember, Tasha continued, one night when she was sick, she took my hand and said, if you ever meet a man named Whitford, tell him he was wrong. Love wasn't the mistake he thought it was. Eleanor gasped. It was barely audible, but enough for Tasha to notice. Ms. Whitford? She asked, concerned. Eleanor blinked rapidly, trying to compose herself. I'm fine, dear. Just the name you said, Whitford, it startled me. Tasha frowned. Why? Do you know someone with that name? Eleanor hesitated. Her tongue felt heavy, her mind screaming yes, but her voice whispered something safer. I used to. Tasha leaned in. Was he from around here? No, Eleanor said quietly. He was from Louisiana. Baton Rouge, originally. Tasha's eyes widened slightly. That's where Mama met my dad. She worked at a hospital there before we moved here. The two women stared at each other for a long moment. Neither spoke. The air between them felt charged, like the quiet right before a thunderstorm. Finally, Tasha laughed nervously. This is crazy. What are the odds? Eleanor smiled weakly, her eyes watery. Life has a strange way of bringing things full circle. Tasha tilted her head. You know, you remind me of her sometimes. The way you talk, gentle but strong. She used to say things the same way Eleanor reached across the table without thinking, resting her trembling hand over Tasha's. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman. She was, Tasha said softly. I just wish I could have asked her more before she passed. There's so much I'll never know. Eleanor nodded, her throat tight. Maybe you'll learn more than you think. Tasha smiled faintly, though confusion flickered in her eyes. You say that like you know something I don't. Eleanor hesitated, searching Tasha's face. The curve of her jaw, the warmth in her smile, the quiet kindness in her tone. It was all too familiar. Then her gaze drifted again to the locket. That worn silver piece that had once hung from her son's neck. The past wasn't just whispering anymore. It was shouting. Eleanor sat back, her fingers trembling as she handed the necklace back. Tasha, dear, would you mind telling me the year your mother met your father? Tasha thought for a moment. She said it was in 1982. Why? Eleanor closed her eyes. 1982. The same year Michael left home. The same year he told her he was seeing someone she would never approve of. Her voice broke as she said, No reason, sweetheart. Just trying to place a memory. Tasha smiled, but something in her expression showed she knew there was more to that question. The walls Eleanor had built over 40 years were cracking, and she knew, deep down, that the truth she'd avoided all her life was sitting right across from her, smiling through the same eyes that once belonged to her son. But how do you tell someone that their life began with the secret you spent decades trying to forget? The diner had started to empty again. The sun hung low now, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. The smell of fried catfish and coffee lingered in the air, but Eleanor barely noticed any of it. Her hands were still trembling beneath the table. She kept seeing Michael, his smile, his anger, that last moment at the front door when he'd shouted that he didn't care about money, only love. And she'd told him love wouldn't pay the bills, that it wouldn't keep him safe, that it wasn't enough. 40 years later, those words still burned. Tasha sat quietly, stirring the last bit of sugar into her coffee. You ever feel like life's just a bunch of stories that never really end? She asked, breaking the silence. Eleanor gave a small, sad smile. Oh, I know that feeling better than anyone. Tasha nodded, resting her chin on her hand. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him. My dad, I mean. If he was happy. If he ever thought about us, Eleanor's heart sank. He did, she whispered before she could stop herself. Tasha looked up. Sorry? Eleanor blinked, fumbling for words. I just mean, I'm sure he did. Men like that, they carry their regrets quietly. It eats at them. Tasha tilted her head. You sound like you knew him. Eleanor forced a small smile. Maybe I knew someone like him once. Tasha laughed lightly, unaware of how close she was cutting. "Well, whoever he was, he gave me this," she said, touching the locket. "And I guess that's something." Eleanor swallowed hard. "It's more than you think, dear." A silence stretched between them, heavy, meaningful. Then Eleanor spoke again, her tone softer. "Tasha, may I ask, what did your mother look like?" Tasha smiled, her eyes lighting up. "She was beautiful. Brown skin like mine, big curly hair, the kind of smile that made people stop talking. But she was tough, too. Didn't take nonsense from anyone." Eleanor smiled sadly. "Michael used to like women like that." Tasha's brow furrowed slightly. "Michael?" Eleanor froze. The name had slipped out. Her chest tightened as she realized what she'd done. "My son," she said quickly. "His name was Michael." Tasha's eyes softened. "That's a good name. Was he anything like you?" Eleanor chuckled weakly. "Lord, no. He was freer than I ever was. He saw beauty in things I thought were wasteful. He loved people, truly loved them, no matter where they came from. It used to drive me mad." Tasha smiled. "Sounds like someone I'd like." Eleanor's lips trembled. "I think you would have." Tasha reached across the table, her voice gentle. "You miss him, don't you?" Eleanor nodded, tears threatening. "Every day. There isn't a sunrise or sunset I don't think about him. I keep wondering if I could have changed what happened." Tasha squeezed her hand. "You can't blame yourself forever. Some things just happen." Eleanor looked at her, really looked, and saw Michael again. The way his eyes softened when he tried to comfort her, the warmth in his tone, the same warmth Tasha carried. The air seemed heavier now. The lights flickered slightly, as if the universe was holding its breath. "I need to ask you something," Eleanor said suddenly. "It might sound strange." Tasha leaned in. "Go ahead." Eleanor hesitated. "Did your mother ever mention his last name? Or anything about his family?" Tasha furrowed her brow. "Only once. She said his family was rich, real rich, but she said it like it was a bad thing. Said they looked down on her." Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. "She said they didn't think she was good enough for him," Tasha continued, "but she never told me their names. She just said, if you ever meet them, don't hate them. They didn't know better." Eleanor closed her eyes. Her breath trembled as a tear finally escaped. "She was right," she whispered. "We didn't know better." Tasha blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Eleanor took a shaky breath. "My son, Michael Whitford, left home the same year your mother met your father. He told me he was in love with a nurse from Baton Rouge named Denise. I told him to choose between her and the family. And he chose her." Tasha froze. The words hung in the air like static. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Wait," she whispered. "What did you just say?" Eleanor's voice broke. "I think your mother's Denise Green was my son's Denise." The room fell utterly silent. Even the sound of the fryer in the back seemed to fade. Tasha stared at her, the truth forming slowly in her mind. "Are you saying—" Eleanor nodded, tears streaming now. "Tasha, I think I'm your grandmother." The young woman pushed her chair back, staring in disbelief. No, that can't be." Eleanor reached out, her hand trembling. "Look at the necklace, sweetheart. I gave it to Michael. He gave it to your mother." "It's his." Tasha shook her head, breathing uneven. This is too much. You can't just—" "I know," Eleanor said quickly. "I know it's sudden. But please, Tasha, I'm telling you the truth. I've been looking for closure for 40 years, and today, God led me right to you." Tasha looked down at the necklace, her chest rising and falling fast. Her mother's words echoed in her head. "If you ever meet a Whitford, tell them they were wrong." Her voice cracked. Oh my God. Everything she thought she knew about her life had just been rewritten in a single afternoon. But sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free right away. It breaks you first. Tasha sat frozen in the booth, her hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. The diner around them might as well have vanished. She could barely hear the chatter, the clatter of dishes, or the hiss from the kitchen. It was just her, and the woman sitting across from her, whose tearful eyes looked so much like her own. "No," Tasha said, shaking her head slowly. "That's not possible. My mama would have told me. She wouldn't have kept something like that from me. Eleanor's voice trembled. She was protecting you. Protecting him. Protecting both of you from my pride. Tasha swallowed hard, her breath shaky. So, you're saying your son, Michael Whitford, he's my father? Eleanor nodded, tears spilling freely now. Yes, darling. I believe he is. Tasha's chest tightened. And you, she pointed, her voice cracking. You're the reason he left her? Eleanor closed her eyes, pain flashing across her face. Yes, it was me. I told him she wasn't right for him. I said things I can never take back. He told me I didn't understand love. Tasha pushed herself up from the booth, pacing slowly. Her mind raced. All those nights she cried by the window, she whispered, almost to herself. All those years she told me he was a good man. I used to think she was fooling herself. She turned back toward Eleanor, tears streaming now. But she wasn't, was she? Eleanor shook her head. No, sweetheart. She wasn't. The older woman's voice cracked again. I thought I was protecting my son from a hard life. From judgment. From what people would say about him being with a woman the world didn't think fit into our family. I was wrong. Tasha stared at her, her heart pounding. You didn't just break his heart. You broke hers. You broke mine before I was even born. Eleanor covered her mouth with one trembling hand. I know, baby. I've lived every day of my life with that shame. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the ceiling fan, the faint chatter of two men at the counter, everything blurred into the background. Eleanor tried to continue, her words fragile. I used to imagine that if I ever saw him again, I'd tell him I was sorry. But now, I see him every time I look at you. Tasha's lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. The anger she wanted to feel melted into confusion, sorrow, disbelief. Why now? She finally asked. Why tell me this now? Eleanor looked down at her coffee. Because the truth doesn't go away, Tasha. It finds you, even when you run from it. I spent my whole life pretending I could bury it under money, houses, and silence. But when I saw that locket on your neck, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. Tasha sank back into her seat, shaking her head. All these years, I thought my family didn't exist. Turns out, I've had one this whole time. Eleanor reached across the table, her old hand trembling. You have family, sweetheart. You have me. If you'll let me be that, Tasha hesitated, her jaw tightening. You can't just walk in here and expect everything to be okay. I don't, Eleanor said quickly. I don't expect forgiveness. I only ask for a chance. To know you. To love you like I should have loved him. Tasha looked away, blinking hard. You don't even know me. Eleanor smiled faintly. Oh, but I do. You're strong, you're kind, you love deeply. Those are the same things that scared me about your father. Tasha's lips trembled. You sound like you've been rehearsing this for years. I have, Eleanor admitted softly. I just never thought I'd get to say it. The silence that followed was heavy. Not cold, but full of everything neither woman knew how to express. Finally, Tasha whispered, You took him from her. And from me. But you didn't have to take him from yourself, too. Eleanor's tears fell freely now. I did that the night I told him to leave. I just didn't realize it until it was too late. The old woman looked down, her hands trembling as she spoke. If I could trade everything I have, the money, the houses, the name, for one more moment with him, I would. But I can't. All I can do is love what's left of him. Tasha stared at her, that last line cutting through her anger. Love what's left of him. The locket on her neck felt heavier now, like it had been waiting all this time for this very moment. Eleanor's voice broke once more. Tasha, please. Let me make this right. Let me at least try. Tasha looked at her for a long moment, her breath trembling. Then slowly she unclasped the locket again and placed it in Eleanor's hand. Eleanor looked down at it, then up at her. You don't have to. I'm not giving it up, Tasha said quietly. I'm sharing it. If what you're saying is true, then this belongs to both of us. Eleanor's lips parted, a sob caught in her throat. She closed her fingers gently around the locket, her tears falling onto her hand. And in that small diner, a lifetime of distance, shrank to the length of a table, and two broken hearts began to find their way back to each other. But forgiveness doesn't come easy, especially when it means facing the parts of yourself you spent decades denying. The air inside Magnolia Diner felt different now, quieter, softer somehow. The last of the customers had gone, and the neon sign outside flickered against the fading daylight. Tasha sat with her elbows on the table, head bowed, breathing slow and heavy. Across from her, Eleanor clutched the silver locket between her fingers like it was the last fragile piece of her son she'd ever hold. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Tasha broke the silence. "I don't even know what to feel right now. I'm angry, but I'm also..." She exhaled. "I don't know. It's like everything makes sense now, but I wish it didn't." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I understand. I've been wishing that same thing for 40 years, Tasha's eyes glistened. I used to make up stories about my dad. I'd tell my friends he was an artist, or a soldier, or a teacher. I thought if I made him sound important, maybe the pain of not knowing him would hurt less." Eleanor's voice shook. "He was important, sweetheart. He was kind, passionate, stubborn, and he loved your mother deeply." Tasha smiled faintly through tears. "Sounds like me." Eleanor let out a soft, trembling laugh. "Exactly like you." Tasha leaned back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "You know, Mama used to tell me something weird. She said, 'One day the truth will walk through your door. Don't run from it, even if it hurts.' I thought she meant something else, but I guess she was right." Eleanor smiled sadly. "Mothers usually are." Even when it takes decades to realize it, for the first time since she walked in, Eleanor looked at Tasha not as a stranger, not even as a reminder of the son she lost, but as her own flesh and blood. A piece of Michael still here, alive, breathing, forgiving. "Tasha," she said softly, "I don't expect you to forgive me today. Maybe not ever, but I want to be part of your life, not out of guilt, but because I see him in you, and because I don't want to waste what little time I have left pretending I'm alone." Tasha looked at her, eyes full of conflict and pain, and something new, compassion. "You hurt him," she said quietly, "and my mama too, but I can see you're hurting too, and I guess hurt people just keep passing it along until someone decides to stop." Eleanor nodded, her lips trembling. "Maybe that someone is you." Tasha reached out slowly, her hand shaking. For a moment she hesitated, then she placed it gently over Eleanor's. The old woman let out a sob she'd been holding for 40 years. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I'm sorry. For everything. For what I said, for what I didn't say, for all the time we lost." Tasha's voice cracked. "I think maybe you've said enough. What matters is what you do now." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "Then let me start by knowing my granddaughter. Let me meet your little boy, please." Tasha's breath caught, and for the first time she smiled. "His name's Caleb. He's 7, and he's got the same eyes you have." Eleanor's lips curved into a trembling smile. "Then I'd say that's proof we've both been given another chance." Outside, the light rain began to fall. Gentle, rhythmic, cleansing. Tasha stood, gathering her things. "You staying in town tonight?" Eleanor nodded. "At the old inn down the road." "Then come by in the morning," Tasha said. "Caleb will be up early for school. He'll talk your ear off about dinosaurs and pancakes." Eleanor chuckled, her tears still wet on her cheeks. "I'd like that very much." Tasha leaned over the table and after a long pause wrapped her arms around her. Eleanor froze for a second, then melted into the embrace, clutching her granddaughter tightly, as though afraid letting go would make her disappear. It wasn't polished or perfect. It was raw, awkward, and real. The kind of hug that breaks you and heals you all at once. They stayed that way for a long time. Ayaba, two women bound by blood, regret, and the unexpected grace of forgiveness. When Tasha finally pulled away, she smiled through tears. "You know, Mama used to say that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means choosing to stop hurting." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Then let's stop hurting, sweetheart." Together, Tasha smiled. Together. As Eleanor left the diner that night, she paused at the door, looking back at Tasha, who was wiping tables with a lightness in her step that hadn't been there before. The silver locket caught the light again, no longer a reminder of loss, but a symbol of what was found. Outside, the rain shimmered on the Bentley's hood as Eleanor climbed in. For the first time in decades, her heart felt lighter. Not fixed, not whole, but open. She whispered to herself as she started the engine, "Michael, I found her. I found our girl." And somewhere deep in her heart, she could almost hear his voice saying, "It's about time, Mom." Because sometimes forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It redeems it. And if you've been holding on to anger, guilt, or distance, maybe it's time to pick up the phone, knock on that door, or sit down with the person you've been avoiding. Sometimes the healing you need is just one honest conversation away.